prompted Friday's march organized by the Mamelodi concerned residents? Are all forms of violence against foreign nationals not a violation of human rights? How are the latest developments likely to affect South Africans in other parts of the continent? And can the high rate of unemployment in the country be blamed on foreign nationals? A very good afternoon to you. This is Question Time. I'm Simphiwe Ngwane. Hello and welcome to the show. My name is Simphiwe Ngwane, standing in for Mpho Tsedu. Now, the much-anticipated march organized by the Mamelodi concerned residents took place in Pretoria on Friday. The protest came in the wake of the recent torching of businesses alleged to be brothels and drug dens all around Gauteng. Now, police officers had to fire stun grenades in order to bring the volatile situation under control. The organizers are calling on the authorities to deport foreign nationals who deal in drugs. They also blame law enforcement agencies for not clamping down on those operating without proper licenses and documents. Now, the Human Rights Commission has raised concerns about reports of escalating violence against foreign nationals. And meanwhile, the Foreign Affairs Minister, Malusi Gigaba, has echoed President Jacob Zuma's words that South Africans are in their nature not xenophobic. We are coming to live from Johannesburg. Therefore, you can call us and air your views on the following numbers on your screens right now: 089 110 4210, or tweet us your comments. Our Twitter handle is @QuestionTime24. Now, my guests this afternoon are Makgoka Lekganyane, the organizer for the Mamelodi Concerned Residents Organization. He's joining us from our Hatfield studio in Pretoria, and we're also expecting to be joined by Gashel Brooks, the communications coordinator at the South African Human Rights Commission. But then before we get into that discussion, let's have a look at what President Jacob Zuma had to say about the xenophobic attacks around Pretoria.
It must be done peacefully, so that we understand what are the complaints, so that we can follow and meet those kind of complaints that people are making. We can't cause problems. We can't kill people. We can't turn it into a xenophobic thing. We need to deal with it properly. And I plead with yourselves who talk to the people that make a distinction that whether he's a South African or is a foreigner, if a person commits crime, that person must be dealt with.
All right, there we have it, President Jacob Zuma saying that South Africans are not in their nature xenophobic. And I'm sure you've seen that clip there, Mr. Lekganyane. Can you take us through the background of what really prompted Friday's march?
Okay, thank you. Another thing is I would like to highlight is I really have a problem with the media. The way the statements were changed, if you go to the the Metropolis, you'll see the march said there is a march against illegal immigrants, and the management at the Department of Home Affairs. And again, it was stated the reasons for why the march, was happening. And again, to the Department of Labor, to the police, as you stated. So if you see in South Africa, this is what's happening. And I'm surprised, like institutions like the Human Rights Commission, they're not really doing their research if organizations like the Sustainable Livelihood Foundation estimated that 60% of the people in townships are unemployed. And you go there to, even in general, in the whole of South Africa, 36% of people are unemployed, if you include discouraged job seekers. Then, again, there are many things. So when we look at the issue of, before I get into that, we had another problem in terms of the media. They've stated this as a xenophobic march, a march against foreign and anti-foreigner march, and which is not the case. That's why I said that, the march stated it clearly that the march is against illegal immigration, and this is against, and again, directed at the Department of Home Affairs, the management at the Department of Home Affairs, at the Department of Labor, at the police. And they made some narrative that, distorted everything. And you look at even the hoax.
Well, just to interrupt you there, Mr. Lekganyane, I guess
from different countries.
I guess the issue is the timing of the march.
I can't hear you clearly.
Well, I guess, can you hear me now?
What's happening? That's another thing.
Well, I guess the timing of the march, I guess the issue is the timing of the march. Why hold a march in the wake of the renewed violence against foreigners?
Look, that's another thing that, people are saying as to what is the problem in South Africa. The problems are addressed. And that's why we're saying our march was to the Department of Home Affairs, the departments that were that are instilled with of ensuring that they do those works. You look at what happened, in terms of, actually you cut me short before I finished all the media, because even in some radio stations, 702, you have some presenters, not really reading the memorandum. They'll say, the hair industry was destroyed because the Competition Commission did not intervene in investigating unfair pricing in the industry. And after that, they cut the statement. And the statement was highlighting that, even the local industry, local trucking industry is facing competition. They cannot formalize because they're competing with illegal trucks and illegal, vehicles that conduct business in South Africa while they don't have permits to do those things, and as a result it affects the local trucking industry. We'll never formalize, and after that people say we are lazy. So
all right, I'm going to have to interrupt you there, Mr. Dechanyane, and our other guest is already in studio, and let me just introduce to you Mr. Kashel Bruce from the South African Human Rights Commission. A very good afternoon to you and welcome to the show.
Good afternoon to you too and to the people watching it all.
Right, do you think South Africans are in their nature xenophobic, to start with?
No, I don't think that South Africans are by our nature xenophobic. I mean, if you look at our constitution, if you look at how we built this democracy post-1994, I don't think that it's in our nature to be a bunch of bigots. We built this democracy, we built our constitution on the notion of acceptance and wanting to integrate based on our various diversities. But what I do think, it's a bit disingenuous for the various groups that we saw getting together and initiating these marches, constantly shifting goalposts when it comes to what the issues actually are. If I can recall, and I mean, you being a media practitioner, you know for a fact that 2 weeks ago it was being reported that this was a march against crime, and that was what the issue was. Subsequent to that, suddenly it's a whole bunch of new issues that have been thrown into the basket as being the problem when it comes to the presence of foreign nationals within our communities. And the key question that the South African Human Rights Commission has, it recognizes people's right to demonstrate, to protest, but simultaneously we have to ask ourselves this question: does your protest against, say for example, the presence of undocumented migrants, or the difficulties that have not been dealt with within communities, being crime, being the socio-economic conditions that the gentleman had referred to, does that entitle people to loot up to 30 shops, to do the damage that we've seen to the vehicles, to initiate the assaults that we've seen against people?
All right.
And this is what is of concern.
Kashel, just hold your thought there. Let's take a call as we've got Kombini from Eastern Cape. A very good afternoon to you, sir.
Okay, afternoon. Okay, thanks for this topic.
Indeed.
I would like to ask Mr. Brooks of Human Rights to go and Mabambela Parliament, because those people at that Parliament are failing as South Africans. And another thing, this thing is not xenophobic. It's a serious matter. Our country is going down. Our country is being taken in front of us. This is our struggle. Their business, our competition, are illegal.
Okay, so if you think it's not xenophobic, what do you think the problem is then? If you think this is not about xenophobia, what do you think the problem is then?
This is not xenophobia. And another issue, if you look at our township, they have businesses that they don't have permit to. But when a South African doing business anyway, what type of business you want everywhere, anyway, the police arrest him. Look at, for example, the cities of Tyrant. If South African is a South African, bayabanjwa. Eyami into it, abaphume bonke kuze abantu ba-professional bane-skills. Ayonyani basilevu. If silevu kutheni sine-graduates ezingaphangeliyo ezi-more than million ezingaphangeliyo kanti silevu, kutheni betrade kwi-shops ezindala? What abantu ezi-shops zabo baqhuba ziqhubela
All right,
kwishop
Mkombini,
South Africa.
Mkombini, thank you so much for your call. Yeah, our guest will answer that. All right, how can you weigh in on this?
You know what, the line is
I've
the
missed
line is
part
not
of
clear.
what the question was, unfortunately, because of linguistics issues. But I caught part of what the gentleman had
can
said.
you hear
For
you?
example, the fact that this is
Hello?
not... The fact
All right,
that
I'm coming to you there, Mr. Lekganyane. Let's just wait for Gashel to make his point.
I can't hear
the point that I wanted to make is that I heard the gentleman saying that, look, it's not xenophobic. He's saying that, talking about the illegal situation with traders and so forth. The concern that we have, and this is really what is of concern, I think, holistically, never mind the fact that we had people lashing out against the presence of foreign nationals, is the fact that we understand that societies and various communities have legitimate concerns that they're worried about. So it's the socioeconomic conditions that they live under. It is the fact that initially, as I said, it was an issue of crime. That people said that the police aren't responding in time and that the police aren't doing anything about their complaints. Those are legitimate concerns. But the question that we have to ask ourselves is this the best means of achieving these goals? Because surely the authorities need to be brought in.
So it hits back
relevant.
on the government for non-delivery of basic services.
One can interpret it that way, but the issue is that if you have a legitimate concern about an issue that is an issue of governance, so whether it's police, whether it is the socioeconomic conditions within your community, surely the appropriate way to tackle this is to take it to those authorities. I mean, that is why we have structures like IPID, for example, if there's police corruption. Very recently in El Dorado Park, we had that situation with the lolly lounges, where a lady wrote an open letter to the president, and there was massive outcry, national outcry. It came to the media. It was something that was well publicized. And within no time in El Dorado Park, we saw the presence of military. Policemen and policewomen were removed from police stations and new people replaced them. Now, the question is, was it a sustained effort? Maybe not. But the point is, at the time, when there was a call for response from the community, they did so in a sustained and they did it in a very appropriate way.
Sure.
And there were results. This does not give results. And what disturbs the South African Human Rights Commission in particular is the fact that you're infringing on the rights of other people by looting their businesses, by beating them up, by specifically aiming your action against a particular group. Because one can't argue that crime is the sole purvey of foreign nationals.
Yeah.
Nor can you say that some of the social ills that people have identified that are part and parcel of these communities, yes they are just an issue that is linked to foreign nationals. And then what other conclusion can you reach but the fact that surely this is xenophobic in nature?
All right, again, please hold the thought. We'll take a short break now. We'll be back with more right after this. And a reminder that you can also call us and air your views on the following numbers on your screens: 089 110 4210. Question time, we'll be right back. Don't go away.
The only way to pour the perfect beer, this professional barman would tell you, is into a glass tilted at exactly 45 degrees. Oh, bless you. Bless you, sir. Bless you again. Well, we'd say the perfect way to pour a beer is at this angle. Straight into your mouth. Tops its bar. Good beer, good advice, no Ponzi beer stuff.
Welcome back. You're still watching Question Time. My guest this afternoon, Gashel Brooks, the Communications Coordinator at the South African Human Rights Commission. And joining us from our Hatfield studio in Pretoria is Makgoka Lekganyane, the organizer for the Mamelodi Concerned Residents Organization. And we've got on the line Albert from Limpopo. A very good afternoon to you, Albert. Thank you so much for your time.
Good afternoon, sir.
How are you doing? What's on
May
the
I
line?
just ask you, why are these people like Tawon Begis, those people who were outside, were they scattered throughout the country outside?
Say that again, sir. What's the question?
That maybe answered from there.
What's your question again, sir?
The question is that those people who have said that they were outside and they were covered, maybe not being victimized, like here in South Africa, if they say that we are Xenophobia, were they not in the camps?
Well, I'm sure our guests have got that question. Do you want to add to what he said?
Well, one thing I've heard as a common narrative is the fact that we had many South African stalwarts outside of South Africa, during the years of apartheid, pre-1994 in Zambia and other countries.
Yeah.
And they behaved themselves really well, and they were confined to small spaces, and, they didn't cause upheavals. I think that we should recognize that there's a massive difference in the world in the year 2017 and in the 21st century. I think that it's a well-known fact that globally, the phenomenon of human movement across the world is something that we're all grappling with. And that is why we see and talk about these issues on a global level, whether it be in Europe, whether it be in the USA, or whether it be, in fact, yes, in South Africa. Right. And I think it is a well-known fact that it is a case of adapt or die for any country in the world to deal with migration. And yes, it does imply that governments need to ensure that they have sufficient documentation and processes in place for letting people in through their borders. But again, and this is the issue, I think, at the center of this, the action that we saw this past 2 weeks, whether it was in Rosettenville or it was in Pretoria West, does it contribute to fixing the current situation? Because by people, ordinary citizens like you and I, going out and amassing in groups, going about looting shops, beating people up, and doing some of the horrific things that we've seen in the last 2 weeks, it doesn't solve the problem, because neither you nor I have the capacity to determine whether someone is in the country on a documented basis.
Sure.
Nor are you and I in a position, for example, to, by merely looking at someone and making an assessment based on their perceived nationality, determine whether that person, in fact, is responsible for the drug trade.
All right. Hello. Now, Mr. Lekanyana, back to you. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, a little bit. The line is bad, really.
All right. No, I'll try to be as loud as I can.
Hello.
Yeah, I'll try to be as loud as I can. Let's now get to the bolts and the nuts of this discussion. Now, there are about 1.57 million international migrants in South Africa. Can you hear me now, Mr. Lekanyana?
No, I can hear you.
All right. Hang on a second before I finish with this question. All right, there are about 1.57 million international migrants in South Africa and about 5.781 million unemployed South Africans. So it is statistically impossible for 1.57 million people to be taking the jobs of 5.7 million South Africans. They couldn't even take half their jobs. So your anger is misdirected and you are misleading our people. Am I right or wrong?
No, Sabine, I think that is very wrong, and really, you should be those statements, just like the gentleman from the United Human Rights Commission stated. I mean, he's talking about people raising their objections through the relevant institution. That's what we did, and we did highlight to people that this is not we are against xenophobia. The United Nations even included some chiefs from African countries that we don't even know, just to highlight that the march is. A legitimate march is a march to the relevant institutions. And then what highlighted again is must we be intimidated from telling the truth? Must we be intimidated? Must we not talk the truth? Because every time we say something, people are saying this is xenophobic. But is it xenophobic? For instance, the statistics you mentioned, they're not accurate. For instance, we have a 20% discrepancy in the statistical data. In the population data, of which already, according to Migration News, in 95, they already estimated that 5 million people are within South Africa, willing to enter into South Africa. And then even the Nigerian National Union highlighted that there are already 800,000 or over 800,000 Nigerians. We have an estimate that there are 3 million Zimbabweans in South Africa. Where do you get your estimate of 1.2 million? And another thing is, that's another thing that beats us. And I have a problem with organizations like the Human Rights Commission and all other organizations that they don't do really their research. At the end of the day, what they do, why don't they tell us what's happening in Africa? Those are another questions that they should be highlighting. For instance, young South African ladies who are being thrown outside buildings, used as prostitutes. We see that every day. Young 12 years young ladies injected with drugs and used as prostitutes. You have 26 young ladies in Klerksdorp. You have young ladies coming from the Durban, from Eastern Cape, who are used as prostitutes. And Limpopo, everywhere. And then we complain about that, and nobody does anything about it. That's why we went to the relevant institutions. And another thing is, that's highlighted, is South Africa is a young democracy. You know, there's nobody in the world who suffered mental slavery than black South Africans. So what we're highlighting is, even before people understood the parental skills, developed parental skills, or developed the socio-cognitive skills, there are already people who, even in the 1600s, they were involved. I mean, you look at countries like Nigeria, even before the 1600s, there was this issue of human trafficking, sex trafficking. We never had that in South Africa. Malawi was selling people was involved in human trafficking. But we never had that in South Africa. Do we highlight that? You understand? And it's a deep philosophy that's rooted, was never there in our country. It started in 1990, after 1995, but we don't talk about those things. That's why we're saying, you know, like, if people fund, and the problem is our institutions in South Africa are very weak. We have weak institutions, and then you have people who have got this philosophy of selling people, of human trafficking. Then what will happen? And I'm not saying every one of people, of Nigerians or all other nationalities do that. I'm not saying, but the idea is most of them do that. Even the Nigerian president did say that people from Nigeria are criminals.
All right.
I mean, that could, it's a very
Let's take calls now with regards to your statement.
I want to highlight is,
let us take calls now with regards to your statement. We've got Mbewe from KZN. A very good afternoon to you, Mbewe.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Great. How are you? What's in your mind?
Okay. I just want to make a statement. My name is Mbewe. I'm a Zambian. I've been living in South Africa. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you clearly. Go on.
Yeah. Oh, no, I want to make a statement and say, first of all, I do support the march that took place in Pretoria. I do support the march because I believe, take away the media, I believe the march is the march of people trying to raise issues with the government, trying to inform the government that this is the issue. Now, I am a manager in a place where I work. In a place where I work, we have got more than 80% foreign nationals. 12 of them have no documents, they're not documented. I live in an area where I see Nigerians dragging people, selling drugs in the streets openly and bribing the police. So number one, I think the foreigners, before we complain as foreigners, we need to clean up our acts, and the South African police has to wake up because they are so corrupt.
All right.
So if we can have the foreigners cleaning up their acts and the government institutions rising up and being strengthened, especially the police, then we can solve the problem.
All
so
right.
the gentleman
Bewe, thank
from
you
the
so much for
human
your time. Thank you so much for your call. Do you want to respond to what Bewe said, and of course to what Mr. Lekganyane has put across, actually criticizing you for not doing your research with regards to this discussion?
Let me start with the caller first, by all means. The important issue to highlight is that the gentleman himself pointed out that he finds his origins outside of South Africa, that he's Zambian, that there are these 12 undocumented people working within wherever he finds himself working. Whose responsibility is that, especially if you call a show like this and you say that you are part of the management? Surely it's your responsibility to ensure that all your workers have the correct documentation to be able to conduct the work. And that is exactly part of the problem, is that we can't have our cake and eat it. You can't have a situation whereby you do not want the presence of foreign nationals within the workspace, undocumented particularly, and then still employ them on an undocumented basis. So that for me is actually quite shocking. And it goes back to what the gentleman had said coming out of the Mamelodi Residents Association, is that he's talking about young girls selling them into themselves into sex work at ages as early as 12. And this is the question that we have to ask ourselves as a society. Where are the parents in this particular instance? Where are we as a society, as a community, where we believe in this old adage, this old African adage that it takes a village to raise the child? Where is the village in those circumstances where we're taking responsibility for these young people that are addicted to drugs and selling themselves into prostitution, as highlighted by himself? We take, as the South African Human Rights Commission, we take our mandate from Section 184 within the Constitution,
All right.
which outlines that we, therefore, the monitoring and the promotion, as well as the protection of human rights within South Africa. And this is why it concerns us what we saw, because those were flagrant human rights abuses that we saw. And as South Africans, if we want our human rights, as put in the Constitution, to be protected and to be fairly adhered to by the state and by other people, we should also be willing to do that on behalf of other people.
All right, Mr. Likhanyane, what do you think, it's just a parting shot in about 20 seconds, we haven't got much time. What do you think needs to be done to avert the repeat of the 2008 xenophobic violence?
That's exactly the point. Like the gentleman who was talking about, they need to talk about the truth. They know South Africans suffered mental slavery than anyone in the world. Before people develop parental skills, you already had people who are third generations, Nigerians, Zimbabweans, coming in. And at the end, with no skills, with, as a result, what happens? We're not attracting professionals who are here to help us. We attract people who are here to compete with South African for the skills that he could do when he suffered mental slavery. And another thing is I wanted to highlight is even the spaza shop. Like in the spaza shops, we're not protected. And now we have an influx of people from Pakistan who historically, they contributed to beating the confidence of black people. So now what happens is, you have, even in Ethiopia, what they do is, they don't allow any banks anywhere in the world to enter their country because they say, we're building the confidence of our people. Before we can allow any bank, people are taking out the psychological effect of everything in this. So you look at now what
we have to end it there, Mr. Likhanyane, but then thank you so much for your time. It's been great having you on the show. Thanks again for coming through. Well, that was Mr. Likhanyane from the Mamelodi Concerned Residents, and of course Garshel Brooks from the South African Human Rights Commission. Thanks to you two gentlemen for joining us. Well, that's it for this afternoon. A big thank you to my guests for coming through, and for you at home for watching and for your participation in today's program. Till next time then, bye-bye.